one of your school board members, Chad Wolf, and boy, he was genuinely excited to bring this to the community.
He is, and thanks, Gordy, and to KDHL for letting me talk a little bit about this on the radio this morning. And it's been a really pretty cool process over the last year and a half. And at one point during the time, both Kevin Hildebrand, who's our Director of Buildings and Grounds, and I were able to kind of sit in the back seat of the car and watch this thing drive forward because it really has been community-driven, school board-driven, and we just try to give them some guidance on what sort of paths that they have to take in order to get to the point that they got to last Monday night.
Yeah. Are you pretty excited, too?
I am. Yeah, there's a lot of great things within this bond issue. There's some things that we had to leave out. It would be nice to build 2 new elementary schools because those 2 elementary schools are pretty old, but we'll let somebody in the future decide on that. But for the most part, we have a lot of things that are in there and can make I think, a dramatic effect for not only our school district, but for the community of Faribault.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the 2 new elementary schools. Now, you're basically, if I remember reading the details right, basically you're renovating or upgrading every building in the district.
We are, and that's exciting. We think that the 3 elementaries, Roosevelt is, we say it's new, but it's already 20 years old.
Yeah, it's hard to believe.
Yeah, it is, and that obviously has the least amount of renovating in it. But the other 2 elementary schools, we have some renovating with the classrooms, and actually Roosevelt is also getting the renovation for the safety and security for the entrances. We need to do that because right now, it's sad to say, but this day and age, we have to make sure that the wrong people don't get into our schools. And so we have a really nice plan of how to address that situation, but at the same time, still make it an educational institution where parents feel welcome when they come in with their kids.
Yeah. You want the kids to be safe.
We want the kids to be safe, but also, we're only talking a very, very small number of people. We want the people to also enjoy it and make sure that they know that this is an educational institution.
So that's happening at every building, including the Nearstrand building.
It is, and also up at the high school. And the middle school is, for the most part, pretty secure. We'll do some facelift things to make it a little bit more welcoming, but for the most part, the middle school is good. But the high school is probably going to see the most dramatic change if the bond issue passes.
Right, and we'll get to that in a moment. We'll get to the wording too of the questions because I was a little curious about the plan does include an event center, field house, whatever you want to call it, plus a childhood education center, but that's not really in the question.
It actually is in the question. I'll explain that,
okay.
And I can do that when we come back.
I mean, specifically.
Correct. It's not specifically in there. That's correct.
You can be, you're always honest with me. Were you surprised that it was a unanimous vote?
At the very beginning, I wasn't as optimistic as I usually was. Remember, this happened a year and a half ago. And I'll talk about process a little bit, too. But when the community folks got together with the 2 board representatives that were in there, and they were able to listen to the stories from people like Andy Herda and Becky Ford and some of those other folks that really have done a nice job with this whole process, they really changed. And they said, this is what we need to do. And then when we even got the step further, when we hired the architect, and then we put together that task force on facilities, and we met 2 hours every other Thursday night from, I think, February or January all the way to May. It seemed like it was endless. But that second group of community members really kind of put the icing on the cake, saying that, hey, we need to do something. And we did separate the needs from the wants, and we were really very particular what was going to go into this bond issue.
All right, we're going to get that opening market report, a service of your KDHL Agri Boosters. And those Agri Boosters include Northland Buildings for quality post-frame construction. Head to the website northlandbuildings.com. Ag Power Enterprises, your John Deere dealer, Owatonna, Hollandale, Belle Plaine, Osage, and Northwood, Iowa. More on the school request after this.
In the early going on Thursday, cattle and hog futures are mixed, mostly higher. Soybeans and corn are up. I'm John Perkins with the Brownfield. Well,
the only pig report I can give you is the sausages down at the free breakfast were very, very good. Right, Todd?
They were excellent, along with the pancakes.
We both kind of wolfed down our breakfasts.
It was great. It was good timing because this is about the time I get a little hungry in the morning, and it was good timing, Gordon.
Well, I'm glad you came down.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of the folks love to see you there. In fact, the lovely lady sitting next to you.
Yeah, she was a former graduate of Warsaw.
Isn't that amazing? I didn't know Warsaw had a high school.
I didn't either. It was pretty cool. And then she talked about her elementary that was right across the road from their farm. So
yeah, and she graduated. What did she say? There were 27 initially in her class. They ended up with 13 because of the war.
Yep. It was Miss Spitsack.
Yes. It's hard to put in perspective, really, with people that lived in those years. You know, those of us who didn't. I can't get my mind around it, to be honest.
Right. Just the whole communication, transportation, all those different things that we have today and how they managed back then. It was probably a better era back then where people were actually communicating and talking to each other and having
a little more slow going.
Like a lot more slow going.
No television to distract you.
Right. Yeah, and she told me that her first radio I think she bought was back in 1954 or something to that effect. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
She waited a long time then.
Yeah. Maybe I got that date wrong.
Well, maybe not a long time.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. Anyway, we better continue our conversation about the... Oh, by the way, I did want to mention Marcia Donkers received a transportation specialist award at your board meeting.
She did, and what a wonderful person. Every time you have a conversation with her, she's very professional. She gets you to the right place at the right time, and she's just a wonderful, wonderful person, very well-deserved, and we're very proud of that.
Is this a state award or something?
It's a state award, and they only give 5 away
Wow.
each year to folks, and she was one of the 5.
That is so cool.
It is.
I didn't want the show to go by without noting that.
You bet. Yeah, and transportation, Garrett Regan and Pat Regan, that whole transportation organization down for Faribault, not just our schools, but the entire community of Faribault, they do just an outstanding job.
Yeah. Well, you didn't know that was necessarily going to happen when Tom Merrill went goodbye, you know?
Right. Yeah, Tom did such a great job for many years. I was there his last year, and then I was there during the transition that Garrett came on board.
And it sounds like it was a pretty smooth transition.
It really was. And Tom, of course, helped out all the time, and he still goes down to the bus garage every once in a while. So
I could see him doing that.
Tom's terrific.
Yeah,
Good man.
Just a great guy. So, again, the school board on Monday voted unanimously to go forward to the public with a couple of questions that we're going to vote on November 7th. One polling place?
Nope. Because of the last time, it got really congested at the high school. I don't know if you remember that or not. But we thought it was too congested, so we're going to do 2 polling places in town. One polling place will be at the district office at the middle school, and the other polling place will still be at the high school. And actually, the third polling place we have at Nerstrand. The Goodhue County folks who vote are also at Nerstrand. So we have really 3 polling places, and hopefully that'll leave some of the stress that went through a couple years ago.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people will vote because...
We hope so. I mean, we really want to see what sort of support we have in our community. Like you said, it's a 7-0 vote with the school board. I'm really thrilled about that. We have 2 wonderful board members that are leading this charge, Richard Olson and Chad Wolf. The other board members are certainly right there with them, and it's just been a really pleasant surprise over the last year and a half of how we have evolved to talking about something and then bringing something to the school board to fruition where it passes unanimously.
Well, let's go over the questions. The first one, and I'm going to read it. Board of Independent School District 656 has proposed to revoke the school district's existing referendum revenue authorization of $804.87 per pupil and to replace that authorization with a new authorization of $1,040 per pupil. The proposed new referendum revenue authorization would increase each year by the rate of inflation and be applicable for 10 years, commencing with taxes payable in 2018 unless otherwise revoked or reduced as provided by law.
Correct. So first of all, if that one does not pass, just to make it clear, our current levy does stay in place. So the $840?
Yeah, $804.87.
$804 would stay in place, so we wouldn't lose that revenue if it didn't pass. If the voters approve this, then we have, because we're building 2 new buildings with this bond issue, we need to make sure that we have the support for utilities, for staffing, and for other things that will cost us to run those facilities, including the event center. And so we included all those into a dollar amount and then came up with a figure that would have us, that we would need to increase our levy amount in order to support those different things. So to shorten this up, it's an increase of the levy of about $200 per student.
Right.
And so we've included that piece in the tax impact, and I can talk about the tax impact after that as well.
Right. This has to pass, even to go to the second question.
That's
right?
correct. Yep. In order to even think about voting on the bond issue, we need that money to support those buildings that are going to be opening. And by the way, that dollar amount will be in a separate fund, so it doesn't get mixed up into other funds in the regular general education fund. It's completely separate to support this bond issue.
Okay, and then the question number 2 of School District Question 1 is approved. Shall the Board of Independent School District number 656, which of course is the Faribault Public Schools, also be authorized to issue its general obligation school building bonds in an amount not to exceed $86,160,000 to provide funds for the acquisition and betterment of school sites and facilities, including the construction of secure entrances, safety and security improvements, and office additions and renovations at various school facilities, the completion of code, life safety, traffic flow, and accessibility improvements at various school sites and facilities, and the construction of additions to and the renovation, repair, remodeling, upgrading, equipping, and construction of improvements to various school sites and facilities. Long question.
Yep, all one question. And that it has to be that general because it includes so many things that we have. And as we have our public hearings throughout the year between now and the vote, we'll explain what all of those details are, and hopefully I'll be on the radio and I'll be able to explain different pieces of those as we go through. It's a lot. And so that includes all those renovations we talked about. It includes the event center / field house. It includes the...
Couldn't you, in the question, though, have said improvements to, and then name each of the buildings?
Yep.
And then say the field house, event center, whatever.
Yeah, and it'll come in. We just don't have enough room on that paper for all that. So we'll send every single taxpayer in the district will get a letter that will explain all of that. So they'll know exactly what they're voting on once you get that letter. I think we mail a letter out September 1st or something around that date. Maybe it's October 1st.
So be looking for that in your mail, folks.
Yep, we'll get that sent out. In addition to all the meetings that we'll have to explain this. Like I said, it's been a 1.5-year process. We've had 50, 60 people involved in the community. It was really done in depth. When we hired the architect, we also hired the engineer that prioritized all of our needs. Remember, a few years ago, we passed a $15 million bond. Well, that was actually $30 million of improvements that we needed to make in our facilities, and that didn't get covered. So that's part of it too. A lot of deferred maintenance is in this bond issue.
Was there a thought of having another option, as opposed, including the improvements to all the buildings, but maybe not the field house or the event center and the childhood education?
Yeah, we did. We talked about that in real depth, and there are so many different people that wanted the same thing that they all agreed that we need to have this piece, we need to have this piece, we need to have this piece in order to make this deal with the different parameters that we put forward to the board. And so they said, we could do it piece by piece, but we want to do it all in one shot. And it makes sense to do that because those are the improvements, and it was all of the improvements that were voted on by this committee pretty much passed unanimously. So every single piece that we went through, not the board, but with this committee, both at the ad hoc, the first committee and the second committee, passed by nearly a unanimous vote.
A lot of people have asked me about specifics concerning the field house, which, you're now calling an event center.
Yep. We haven't decided a name yet, but so we could put the slash.
But it seems to me that the most curiosity is about that.
Yes.
How big is this going to be?
Well, I'll use a context. If you look at where the high school is, in the front of the high school, and you go out to the east end of the high school where you go into the entry area, that whole courtyard that people walk down to get into the events will all be part of the Performing Arts Center lobby area and the new administrative offices. And so as you go east to that, all the way to the tennis courts, we'd still be able to put some parking back there. That field house would cover all those tennis courts, go all the way up to the softball field that's back there. It wouldn't cover much of the green area because we still need a road access for the fire department, the police department to go around there. So it's a pretty large area. So it has 5 full-size basketball courts / volleyball courts.
Okay.
It has a walking track on the bottom level, or jogging track. And then on the upper level, we'll have a mezzanine level that will have a walking and jogging track as well, and some classrooms or some areas for community education programs that we could also put in there.
So basically, as I understand it, Chad and I talked a bit after the board meeting on Monday night, and I may have gotten this wrong, but this is going to be open to the public.
It is. The plan is to have it open to the public. Now, we still need to get approval from the school board, but the school board wants to wait to see how the voters are going to weigh in on this. So once it passes, we always want to be optimistic, then the school board and the community will weigh in on all of this. But the intent is to have it as public as possible. Chad often refers to the field house that we have in Cannon Falls that I helped build, and that's open to the public. It started, I don't know what it is now, but we started opening it from 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock at night. No charge. People would come in, they'd walk. We didn't even have supervision up there for a period of time.
So nothing early in the morning, though?
Well, it may be now, but at that time we didn't have anything early in the morning,
Sure.
but it might be now.
But I understand why you want to do it off of school times. That makes sense.
Yep. And actually during school times it was pretty easy. We certainly had some Phi Ed classes in there and the curtains, but parents actually walked while the classes were going on. Now, again, that has to be a board approval with what we have, but it worked out really well in a small community.
Can you put softball games in there when you have bad weather?
I don't think you can put games in there. It's going to be a stretch. I don't know. We'll have to see, and that's a good question, and see if we can.
And the district could make some money by renting the facility out to other schools that can't get their games in because of rain.
Yep.
There's a need for that. There really is.
There is, and just to get the community involved with the whole process, and Chad and I have talked behind the scenes to see what sort of commitment we can get from businesses and people not just within Faribault community, but people that are outside the community that would be interested in helping us out with some various programs or sponsoring various events.
Yeah. But that's the question I get most of, is just how big this is going to be. So do you have a square footage at all that you can...
I don't have it. I'll get all that the next time I come on, I promise, Gordy. I just wanted to talk about the vote and the referendum and the process at this point. So.
And again, the vote is November 7th.
November 7th, yep. And it's that first Tuesday in November like it always is, and hopefully that we get a bunch of folks showing up and coming out to vote.
$86,160,000.
Yep, and the tax impact is about $25 a month for an average home in Faribault. The other thing that really helps, when we talk about why now, why are we bringing this up, there is kind of a small window of opportunity for us, and we do have some bonds that are going off the tax roll. We have some other financial pieces that are actually falling in place very nicely for us. The legislature helped us out a ton with the farmers. There's a 40% credit for any sort of bond issue that they have as an impact on their farmland. So that is really going to hopefully help our farmers. We did include a couple of nurse strand farmers. The bondies were on our committee.
No, that's the bond issue portion. The levy portion is...
Levy's the same. Yep, it's only the bond issue part of it. Yep, the building part of it, when they assess the entire acreage. So we're hoping that those financial things are in place. And as a result, the impact on an average home is about $25 a month. And
obviously, that's a guesstimate because you don't know what the rates are going to be like when you let the bonds...
It is, and we think that we're pretty conservative. We hope... we work with some pretty professional folks to do these estimations, so that's a pretty conservative estimate. If I had to guess, it's probably going to be a little bit lower than what that is. But we say that because we want to make sure that the taxpayers understand that this is going to be the maximum increase that they're going to expect. So,
then you get a new childhood education center, which, according to the plans that I saw on the school board packet, would be on the, at least at this point, McKinley site, right?
That's correct. Yep, we own that land. There's no reason to move it unless the city wants to do some improvement somewhere for whatever reasons, if they want to expand an area for homes or... Well, they
were looking to put another court, on the community center.
Yeah, yep.
But when they hear about this, they may not have to.
Right. So, and I'm going to visit we actually have a meeting with the city tomorrow, and I'll talk to Brian Anderson and Kevin Vracek, and we'll get some more feedback from them and where we are with that whole status. So it's been really a transparent, open communication. I've been at the chamber with Kim Anderson. We've talked a little bit about that. We're going to visit with the city, and I've kept in communication with Brian Anderson through this whole process. So it's been like I said, it's been a very nice process for me. I've been able to kind of take a back seat and then just kind of guide some of what the board and the committee wanted to do.
Well, that's how it gets passed. The more people you get involved and get behind it, I mean, one person leading the charge.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. We need as many people out in front of this as we possibly can. And I can't emphasize enough that this is something that that Faribault's actually needed for a couple of years. I would say that it's also something that the community needs, and we're hoping that people will come out and show their support.
Well, you and I have talked about it many times, maybe because of the goose gunk over at Bruce Smith Field.
Yep.
And Chad said that the facilities did talk about maybe putting turf in there.
They
I don't
did.
know if that's a deterrent for geese or not, but there was talk of that.
There was talk of that. Like I said, they talked about the 2 elementary schools. They talked about a new high school. They talked about purchasing land south of the soccer fields. There are a lot of things that we thought were good ideas, but at this point, we wanted to separate those. We think that some of those are needs, but the committee felt strongly that they wanted to really focus on the deferred maintenance, the safety, security, the academic piece, and something we can do for the city or help the city out with that 2040 visioning, which happens to be the event center.
Just out of curiosity, and you probably don't have the numbers off the top of your head, even though it's not bald like mine. Just out of curiosity, what would 2 new elementaries cost versus doing all this up? I mean, I'm wondering if it's maybe more efficient to have new buildings.
We did, and that was one of the parameters that the task force looked at, is what those were. So let me just go with the Area Learning Center. The Area Learning Center, to renovate it, was to build a new Area Learning Center. It was only at $1.5 million more than renovating. So that was no brainer. So they said, we're not going to invest all this money on a building that's built in the 50s or 60s. So they tore it down, and they'd like to tear it down and then put a new one up. Same thing for McKinley. The ratio was so high to renovate McKinley that they said, it doesn't make any sense financially for the taxpayers or for us to renovate, so we're going to tear it down and build a new early childhood. The 2 elementary schools were not quite there. They're still relatively well maintained.
Okay.
We're going to pull out the kindergarten and put the kindergarten class at the early childhood center, so we'll have an early childhood kindergarten center. And
so all kindergartners are going to go to this center.
That's correct, this brand new, beautiful center that we're talking about building. And that'll help free up space at the elementary schools because we're pretty tight there.
Yeah. The only drawback there, if it is a drawback, in my mind, is now you go to the building as a first grader.
Yes.
Whereas as a kindergartner, you would have gotten used to the building. Now it's as a first grader. But that's,
it is. And then,
they can adapt to that age more so than we can.
You can. And, and that's a question that we struggled with. Is it better to have a K4 or K5 building,
right,
or is it better to have a 0 to K building? And all the research with early childhood points that transition between preschool and kindergarten now is extremely important.
Okay.
So there's some educational data. We're not saying that it'd be nice to do a 0 to 5 or grade 5, but we don't have the room or the capacity to do that. But having that does have some good educational value and logic to have that kindergarten class in that early childhood.
And that also tells me that your enrollment projections say you're going to have some big kindergartens.
We could. And it depends. And that's another this is the selfish part on the district. We think that we can keep more of those kids coming from preschool if they go into kindergarten. Now, we love all of our other schools and we collaborate as much as we can, but we're competing just like they are. If we can keep those kids from preschool to kindergarten, we think maybe we'll be able to retain some of those kids in our public school system.
You know what amazes me when you look at numbers? More and more kids are being homeschooled.
Oh, they are, yes.
That's just really growing.
It has. It's kind of grown all over the nation. It's not just in Faribault.
Right.
And, quite honestly, some of the homeschool families that are doing some of these homeschooling, I wouldn't say some, I'd say the vast majority, they're doing a really good job with those kids. Sometimes those kids will sometimes come to the public school, especially when they get to high school, when they take algebra or calculus or some of those high-level science classes, and they're performing very well. So it's a choice that parents have. We always open the door and say, if you want to take music or art, of course we get some money from that if they come in. We say, come on in, and we'll welcome you, and you can register anytime for it. And
they can participate in extra, sports and that sort of thing?
Yes, they are also eligible. That's part of the State High School League that we may allow homeschool families to participate in athletics.
Do you have many do it?
We have a couple, yeah. I don't know if you remember a runner over in Cannon Falls. Her She's oh gosh, I can't remember her name now. She runs for the University of Minnesota Duluth. She's number 2 in the nation right now. Oh my gosh, I've been gone from Cannon Falls so long.
Is it Trost?
Yeah, Emmy Trost.
Emmy Trost?
Yeah. She's a homeschool kid.
I didn't know that.
She was, all the way through school, and she participated in track in Cannon Falls.
As you just mentioned, phenomenal
athlete. Yeah, so you do get some of those athletes that come along.
No, that's cool. So again, we'll be visiting some more, and maybe we can pick a different project each time you come on. For example, maybe next time we talk about the elementary schools, and then the next time the middle school, and then we can maybe go to the high school.
That's a great idea, because there's so much detail in each one of those different areas.
But you said it included that in there.
It does. It includes it in there, and like I said, the letter will come out explaining what that question all entails.
Okay.
It's almost a 2-page letter, so it's pretty large.
It almost has to be.
It does.
Will it include pictures? I liked your packet, the school board packet. For those who are listening and have computers, you can go online and look at the school board packet. I did.
Yes.
And it's got the pictures on there, the conceptual, obviously, drawings.
Yes.
Those aren't permanent.
Right. Yeah, those are very conceptual right now. Yep. And the letter we have to go through our attorney, so we can only put in so much detail for the letters. So, but again, the meetings that we'll have, I'm sure we'll have 40 to 60 meetings that will be out and about in the community during this
that
process.
part doesn't make sense to me. That you can only put so much detail in. I would think you'd want as much detail as possible in, so there's no question you know what you're voting on.
Yeah, we just can't be political. So when it comes from the school, the attorneys will look at it, and I'm not supposed to say you need to vote on this or you don't need to vote on this.
Well,
so
it says on there that a vote for this is a vote to increase your taxes.
Yeah, and that's what the letter does. It talks about what they're going to get in that vote. So,
which most people, I think, would know, but that has to be on there.
It does.
It does. One of those legal things.
Right. And it's. I think we're one of the few schools, or one of the few states in the nation that has to have that on their ballot. But we have it, and we deal with it, and hopefully things will go all right.
Well, I know you would never say this, but it probably doesn't feel real fair that other governmental entities don't have to abide by some of the things that you do.
Yeah, but, and there's two things.
For example, the county built a county building years ago, didn't have to go to the voters.
Right. The good thing about going to the voters, and I had a board member say this to me a long time ago, is that when you go to the voters and it passes, you have the support of the voters. So in that sense, it's actually a good thing. It's our job to get that out there so that the voters can see what they're voting on, and hopefully things will go well.
All right, Todd, thanks for stopping in. Don't go away yet.